Hey guys, welcome back to Dutch Craftsmanship. My name is Dustin, and today in the shop we're going to be making a single bit axe handle from scratch. So recently in a previous episode I restored this vintage Collins Legitimus axe head. This one was all rusty and the pole was all kind of busted up, so I cleaned up the pole. I reprofiled the bit and sharpened it up so it's ready to go. So now I'm going to be making the axe handle from scratch from a piece of ash that I have. And this will be a 30-inch axe handle. So this template I made this from kind of testing a few different shapes and sizes of axe handles, and I'm excited to try to use it for the first time and think this is just the perfect axe head to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that piece of ash and we'll start laying out the pattern. So for a full-size axe, you want your grain to run parallel. So with anytime you have a quarter sawn piece like this is an 8/4 piece of ash. The grain in the middle is going to be running vertical as much as possible, and then as it gets to the outside, it's going to turn. So what I want to do is I want to use this piece from the middle, and then I'll leave enough on the sides to be able to make smaller things like hatchets or boys' axe handles, which isn't as critical. Those would have 45-degree grain structure, and that's perfectly fine. But this way, what I'm looking at here is the actual rings of the tree and the grain running as vertical as possible, which will run parallel to the axe head. At 3 inches here, and then 6 inches. I'm just checking, I have my template plenty tall above the top of the handle, so that way I can seat the axe down on it nice and far. This leaves me with at least an inch above the eye to be able to wedge in, and then an inch below too, so I could set this down here, and then in the future if it starts to loosen up, I could always set it down further, and it gives me plenty of room to kind of set that head down in later if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the bandsaw now, and we'll cut it out. Next thing I'm going to do is mark off the center line and my measurements for cutting. So I want to find out where the center of my axe handle is, and then I'll come out on both sides of that to give myself about an inch thickness all the way down the handle. It'll flare out at the end to maybe an inch and a half or inch and maybe 5/8 or so. And then all the way up where the head is, it'll flare back out at the top to maybe, again, an inch and an eighth or so. The thickness of my eye, the width of my eye is about 3/8. So an inch and a quarter, inch and an eighth or so will be plenty enough material to be able to seat that down in there really well. I'm going to give myself some guidelines, and then I'll cut the handle down to about an octagon. And this way, give myself these guidelines, I'll be able to follow these. And like I said, trim everything down so that way I kind of go down to an octagon, and then from there I'll trim it down all the way into a full oval. But I still have the guidelines for my original center line, but these are just going to give me something to trim to so I don't go too far. Before I do too much more shaping on the handle, I want to actually cut out and use a draw knife to draw out basically the shape of the eye. I want to do that now because I can still clamp this into a vise really securely, and I'll use my draw knife and pull down. So right now we have about 1 3/8 thickness on the entire head, so I'm just I marked a center line at 11/16 and just drew that. So this is my center line. I'm going to now kind of draw out the shape of the eye, and then I'll use my draw knife to remove the majority of that material. I'm switching over now to using rasp and spoke shave. I've kind of come as far as I can go with the draw knife, and I just want to, now I'm doing a little bit of finesse to get this head to fit on nice and tight on here. I'm just going to do it just a little bit, just maybe down 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch or so before I stop doing that, and then I'll move over to finishing and actually shaping the rest of the handle before I come back and do the final fit up on the head. All right, guys, so I just spent a good amount of time shaping this down, mostly with a rasp and a little bit of spoke shave, but mostly just rasp. Got the majority of it removed and shaped to the size I like it, and kept kind of feeling it, making sure it felt really good. And then I just moved over to the sander just to clean off most of the tool marks. And it's pretty good. It's nice and straight still. Feels really good. I may do some more finessing in the end, but I think at this point I'm ready to move on. And I'm gonna do the final fit up to the head on the end of the handle and roll from there. We're getting good. As I'm fitting the head, I'm also periodically checking for straightness. It's one of the key things you want to do, make sure that you keep your head straight on the handle. And if you don't do it pretty often, you can really come askew without doing too much. So right now it's starting to just turn a little bit as I'm sitting it on further, which means I just have to take more material off of this side down low where I have these pencil marks, and then I'll take a little bit off of the top as well. So that way it'll help the whole head to start to turn back and back in line with the handle. Now that we have the handle mostly shaped, it's time to kind of decide how far down we want the kerf to cut. So what I'll do is I'll put the head back on, or at least I'll put it on top, and I'll mark off where the top of the head is. Kind of give myself maybe about a half an inch or so above that I'll trim off. But then I'll mark about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way down through the head on the handle, so I know how far to cut my kerf. And so that'll be the actual cutout that I'll cut that'll fit the wedge in to hold the head on. So right at the beginning, you want to take your time to make sure you establish this first cut. Just eye down the middle, make sure it's nice and even, and just take your time, put a nice even cut in, because your blade is going to want to follow that initial cut. So just be careful about it. You can also kind of rock back and forth, and now I'm kind of working down this edge so I can follow the line that I see here and then rock back up, and my saw blade will want to follow that cut that I have started on the front edge. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out a wedge. This is a scrap of hardware that I have. It's a nice contrasting color. I think it's cherry, but I'm not sure. It could be Ipe, but they're both about the same color and have a similar grain structure. But I'm gonna cut this at 2.5 inches. And then I'm gonna do an angle from about a little over 1/4 of an inch at the top down to the edge. And I'll mark that off, and then I'll cut from here down and just go make an even straight line down to my 2.5 inch mark. So again, you just tap it on so it won't fall off, flip it upside, hang it upside down, and that's where the term hanging an axe comes from. So we hang it upside down, and then I'll just go ahead and start tapping on the back, and it'll start working its way up. And you can usually hear the sound change as it moves. The pitch of the hammer hitting the wood will change a little bit. So you can hear it starting to get a little deeper, which means now it's just a solid piece of wood and metal together. That should be good. I got a nice seat, just a little bit of curl in the front, which is fine. Everything else is wedged in because I've chamfered the end of that eye. No curl, that means it's just wedging in really nice and tight inside the eye of that axe head. It's not completely necessary to put glue on your wedges, but I like just the extra hold that it gives. It also adds a little bit of lubrication, which will help it slide into the kerf a little bit better. So unfortunately, it's not the prettiest wedge job I've ever done, but it did start out really tight. The wood inside the eye was just really nice and tight. So, you know, I got probably about half the wedge in on the back end, which is good. And there is a nice mushrooming out on the side, so I'm creating that mechanical hold of the wood actually mushrooming out above the eye. So even though it doesn't look pretty, we'll go ahead and trim this off, clean it up, and see how well it looks from the top. I'm going to go ahead now and chamfer this top edge and just clean up some of this wood that's split out as well. Now that I have the axe hung and I don't need to hammer on the end of this anymore, I'm going to go ahead and trim off the shape of this fawn's foot. And I don't necessarily want to bring this line all the way back to this edge in a complete swoop, because if I do ever need to take this handle off and rehang it again, I want to have a little bit of a flat spot to be able to hit it. So I'm going to bring it up to about here, and I'll just do a nice even round over. All right, guys, we're getting close to the end, so I'm just gonna go ahead and clean everything up now with a cabinet scraper first to make sure I have all the tool marks off from all the rasping. And then I'll just hit it with just a quick once over, probably like 220 grit sand, and then we'll oil it up and we'll be good to go. We're just finishing up oiling it now, and I'll go ahead and wipe off the excess oil, and then we'll give it a few minutes just to sit and soak in, and then we'll take it outside and give it a test run. All right, guys, we are all finished. It works really well. I really like the length of this handle. I've used kind of longer handles, kind of a standard 36-inch handle for a lot of years, and I find that I do, overstrike more often than I like to. So this feels really good. I really like the length of it. This is about 30 inches, so it feels really nice. I feel like I can control it a little bit better, and it's kind of, I think it kind of lends itself back to kind of more the older years, vintage years, where handles were just a little shorter. They seemed like that they had a little bit more control or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I like the length of this handle. It feels really nice. So this is a fun video. It's really nice to make this from scratch with ash. This is a new wood that I haven't used before, and I really like it. It feels really nice. It's beautiful looking wood and has great grain structure, so I think it's gonna work really well. Obviously, only time will tell, but for now, it's really nice. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been fun. Make sure you don't forget to thumbs up this video and like it. Leave me a comment down below what you think, and also make sure you look back. If you didn't see the video where I restored this vintage axe head, make sure you look back at that video as well. We'll put a link to that video in the description down below. So again, this has been a fun build, really nice. I really like this handle. It turned out really well. I'm really happy with it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.